Hi guys, it's Mrs. Magana. I just wanted to try my hand at some YouTube tutorial videos to give you some art lessons at a time that maybe you need something to do. And I thought, why not create? And so I will put together a list of different lessons for you to try out at home, made with objects that you can find in your house. I also have kind of put together little mini kits that perhaps you could even pick up. But again, they're all things that you could find around your house, easy peasy things that we can do together. So let's get started. My first project for you, my first graders and third graders have kind of currently been working on this, and so we're just going to kind of run with it. You could possibly change it up into another shape, but we're actually going to use tubes. That's my joke for you. With the current situation of things, I thought that would be pretty funny to use paper towel or toilet paper rolls for your base of your project. So you will need maybe one, maybe two of those. I will put in the kit a little bit of this tag board, but we are going to be making our pencil project. Thank you, Mrs. Stevens, one of my guru art teachers. But I've done this project now for a couple of years and kind of did my own tweaks with it. And we're going to make our own paper mache paste to coat on that. And things like newspaper and possibly copy paper that you should have at home. The other item you probably will need is tape. And you could use Scotch tape or masking tape. Both will work out pretty well. So let's get started. I brought home, this is actually my house behind me, by the way, my little workspace here. I put it together tonight thinking that I would need a space to kind of broadcast from. So I did bring home some supplies, materials that I can show to you. First of all, though, I do have some posters that I brought home to kind of still be able to teach you things. So I know it's probably backwards in the picture, but this is talking about form. Okay, so our project is actually 3D, which means you could hold it in your hand. You can see it from all different angles, and form is one of those art elements that does that. Okay, so form is one of our words today. Another word that I like to talk about is shape. So speaking of form, 3D, there are a couple of different shapes that we're going to be using on the project. And so in class, my first graders and third graders were referring to 3D forms. For instance, this is a tube, you're right, but it's also a cylinder. Another form that we're going to be making is this cone at the end of your tip. So it is kind of hard to do that part, but actually if you've tried this once, sometimes it's easier the second time. Maybe you've got a brother or sister at home or a friend that you're working with, so you could even help them out by making that. So I'll show you a couple of those tricks. Another thing I wanted to show you, I brought some pictures, like I said, were some actual sculptures. So take a peek at this one. I love this. In fact, I just saw something similar to this in Chicago. This artist takes form to a whole new level, and this is actually in a space outside. Another picture I brought home, this guy. This reminded me, even outside the art museum, that almost French fry looking sculpture. This one too. So kind of cool. So there are some gigantic forms and sculptures that are visible to us as viewers and artists. But we are going to make a little handheld one today. Like I said, pencil, possibly crayon. So let's kind of get going with this. Now, with your tubes, okay? In class, we talked about actually adjoining them together, and so you do need that tape. So I pulled out a couple of pieces already, but just again, masking tape. You could even use Scotch tape. Some of the kids were trying that in class, and it did work out okay. So when I'm putting these together, I kind of just place them, not to kind of squeeze. Sometimes if you did squeeze them in, it would actually fit. So this did work out pretty well for me. And so I can go ahead then, and I said not too much tape because you don't want to waste it just by attaching it. But we talk about sculpture too, and this is an armature. So we say it like your skeleton inside your body holds up you as a person, or you'd be a jello mold of sorts on the floor. This guy underneath our sculpture, right? This is our armature, so things that are built up on underneath and on top of it. So it will look like this in just a second. This does not look very pleasing, but we are going to add our paper and paper mache to it to give it a strong underbody. We also talked about too, every time you adjoin a piece, put it together, it's not very strong. And so we need it to be stronger, and that's why we do the paper mache. Okay, after my 2 tubes are put together, I need to create the cone. This is tricky. I would not suggest for you to use something like paper. You need a little bit thicker, but not as thick as cardboard. So even a cereal box, like the lid, that backing part of that is a thicker piece and not so thick as cardboard. So that would actually be a good alternative if you're trying to use your own things at home. Now you can see on my piece, I've actually already outlined a semicircle. So we talked a little bit about shape. This is a half a circle, semicircle. And a tip, please help yourself out by drawing it so that the line is on the bottom of the paper. Some of my kids were drawing it in the middle, and it was a little bit harder for them to cut. Okay, so keep it easy. Now, I'm just gonna grab a scissors, so you will need a pair, okay? And I'm going to cut out the semicircle. Now I will have some extra piece of this so you could save this. We're gonna do a couple of projects too with collage and things. So this might be a good way for you to save that scrap, okay? Semicircle, voila. Now, here's the trick. This is where it gets kind of hard to create a cone, which is your 3D form. You need to take this, a smiley face, we say. A lot of kids were holding it this way, so be careful. You've gotta have it smiling. And you're gonna take your 2 ends, okay? And you're going to pull them towards your belly button. So a lot of kids kind of started to struggle and they had these weird wonky shapes. And my 3rd graders just did this, okay? So it is a little tricky. But again, if you watch me a few times, I think it'll make sense to you. And I remember long ago me trying to do this and I kind of just watched it and it did click, okay? So smiley face, 2 corners in towards your belly button. And there is my cone. Now, I do want to put a piece of tape. I'm just trying to make this twist. Some of my kids were really innovative and they wanted to stick like a crayon or a pencil in the tip of this to make it actually right. Be kind of cool. And so they did leave a little bit of space. Totally up to you. You do what you like. I also thought if you made a shape like this, this could possibly be a rocket. So you can kind of go however you'd like, okay? Again, cone, piece of tape. Now I can kind of free up my hands, and I just wrapped that tape. I think I might have made it. Oh, that's pretty good. Sometimes the kids make their cone too wide and it doesn't quite stick on that base, but this looks pretty good. Now, you really need your 2 hands, okay, or someone to help you, but I kind of just attach this then. 1 piece of tape on one side. Be patient, it might not stick the first time, so you gotta kind of maneuver it here. And then a 2nd piece of tape on the other side, okay? So it's already popping on, but it'll work. Cool. Now, make sure that's sort of straight too. Some of my kids were really wanting this to be perfect, okay? I did cut other pieces of tape, slightly bigger, but not obnoxious. You don't want to have this huge piece that's all getting jumbled then, and you're wasting mom or dad's tape. And I'm just twisting this around my cone, okay? So it looks pretty silly, but it is that armature, remember, skeleton underneath. There will be things on top, okay? So far, so good. I've got this. It is not falling apart. I can kind of pick it up and sort of move it, and it's not falling into pieces. Now, fun. Now at school, we talk about paper mache as alligator snot. It's elephant snot, whatever the case may be. It's not really snot. I do give a good story about how I go to Florida, into the Everglades, tickle an alligator, make them sneeze, and I bring back loads of the snot. Now that's obviously not true, but I did remember I was talking in class about the country, Mexico. This is a picture of piñatas. And so in Mexico, people make piñatas using simply water, you got that at home, and flour, okay? I bet you have this at home. Now I don't use this in school, 1, because it's just a mess. And 2, sometimes I do have some kids that are allergic to gluten, so you gotta be kind of careful. Typically though, you'd probably be okay. And we can make this stuff at home. So here we go. I'm gonna pour this into my flour. Now I put the flour in the bowl first. I'm adding water, but remember you can't take it away. So a little bit at a time is the key, okay? You could add more flour, but I would rather add the water first. So it's pretty pasty. We are gonna make some salt dough too, I think, this week, because it's just easy. You got that at home. And that's kind of our clay then. But we don't want clay, we want sort of the soupy paste. And mixing it, you can't go too fast either, right? Because you're gonna get this everywhere. By the way, on my table here in front of me, I do have a messy mat. So you probably can't take Mrs. Magana's messy mat from the art room, but you probably could give yourself some newspaper, even a plastic bag, something to just put a lining down between you and your table, maybe your kitchen table, or maybe you're working on the floor. Okay, so I've got this paste. It's still a little thick. I'm gonna add just the rest of my water here. Again, you can always add more, but you can't really take it away. So here's my sloppy, soupy mix. Looks like I'm eating cereal. Maybe even oatmeal. Okay, so here we go, paper mache. The next thing you're going to want to need or use for your project is some newspaper. Now, if you have those magazine pieces that come in the mail, I know I get like a little stack every week of even coupons and things, you probably could use that. I love the newspaper because it works really great, and it is a little bit more papery than that shininess, but it does still work, okay? So my trick in class, I said if you fold your newspaper in half, right, how it's folded, if you rip straight down, the fibers in the paper end up cutting a pretty cool straight line for you. And that's about the size of your strip. We also talked about Three Little Bears. Goldilocks, right, when she's trying out all that stuff, there was such a thing as too big, okay, because I'm ripping my strip, pretty good size. However, this is still too big for your project. It is not that huge. So, too big, too big. Rip it in half, but I'd probably rip it one more time, okay? Just right. You don't want to take your newspaper, if you have this kind like Mrs. Magana, and rip it like this. It doesn't work as good. I mean, this isn't terrible, but way easier this way, okay? Now, how many strips do you need? Not many. A small chunk will do. And I want to kind of rip it though before I get started, because otherwise my hands are going to get all icky and sticky and disgusting. I got to do that first, okay? So, small pile, and I put it next to my project. Now the other thing I think I'm going to do right away, because I'm doing this video here and I don't want to touch my screen, is get my copy paper. Okay, copy paper, computer paper. I bet you got a few pieces at home. I'll try to put some in that kit too, just in case. But I like the white paper because it shows me as your teacher how many layers you're actually putting. This is very different than this, right? And it also gives me a nice clean area to paint on. Now these pencils, we used another layer of colored paper. In fact, I used really thin butcher paper, but I think we'll paint them this time, okay? So white paper. Again, I am ripping it into strips. Not too big, not too small, but just right. So I've got myself a nice little pile. When I get around the cone part of my sculpture, I might need to make those strips a little smaller to kind of fit around it, but you'll see as we get along here. Okay, so far so good. We're ready to rock. All right, soupy mixture, here we go. When I mix paper mache, guys, it's that Elmer's paste, and I like to blend it in the blender. I also use warm water, so it does kind of feel okay on your hands. So this is going to be like a weird texture. If you use a brush, sometimes I have students use a wider brush. You can kind of paint it on that way. Okay, so newspaper first. When we're dunking in our newspaper, we want it to kind of be squeegeed off. You don't want this super, super thick, gloppy, goopy mixture. So I'm squeezing this with 2 fingers, okay? And I'm just kind of, now I can kind of break up what I have in that paper mache paste. So, wrapping it around, and you gotta give it a massage. You know, you gotta get that to be all flat on your sculpture. If you've got those pieces sticking up, it will not look like a 3D pencil, or rocket, or crayon. Whatever you're thinking. If you made it a rocket, you could probably add some sides, like the wings on there too. It'd be kind of cool. And you could do that with your tag board, your sculpture piece. Hoping I'm not getting this on my clothes. I didn't wear my smock. I do have it behind me though. But again, this will not stain your clothes. We always talk about that too. It'll get messy on you, but chances are you've got your laundry. You'll be okay. I doubt you brought your smock home on Friday. Maybe an old shirt or something you could wear. As I'm putting this paper mache on here, I do want to make sure I put it on the base because I want it to look 3D. I want it to give it that illusion that it is not toilet paper tubes. But they do work out great for a sculpture. I would hope also that you have an empty toilet paper tube and you're not unraveling your current toilet paper tube. I bet you're one of those people that might have a few extra ones though. Mrs. Magana needed to get more toilet paper from the store the other day, and ironically then, they were out. So I have a lot of paper towel. I have some napkins, even Kleenex at the ready. So I am prepared. Ironically though, I do have a lot of toilet paper tubes. My mom, her best friend from Michigan, collects them. She has all these ladies collect tubes for her, and that's how Mrs. Magana gets her incredibly great amount of tube stash that I've got in the art room there. They also collect egg cartons for me. So we're gonna do a project with egg cartons too, because I bet you've got some of those at home. All right, so we're almost done with the tip here. And I am then gonna just transition to white paper. Here I go. White paper, same thing. It's a little bit thicker than the newspaper, but again, it's gonna give me a really nice base. And we're gonna stop the lesson there because I will let this dry and I'll come back and kind of show you what I'd like you to do with the paint. But again, it's up to you. This is just sort of a starter and just kind of teaching you a couple of different things. Remember what we said too about this paste. Piñatas, you know, like if you go to a store and you have a birthday or a celebration, you might buy a piñata. In Mexico, they do make it with just flour and water. So things that you have at home. Again, with this paste though, guys, you've got to make sure you're not super globby with it. If you glob it on too fast, it's not going to dry. And so, you know, you might want to paint this in a day or two, depending on how wet you ended up making it. It's not dripping either, right? So I know that I'm doing okay at it. If you also put too much of this, like you really glob it on, it could even mold. So you don't want to put Goldilocks and the Three Bears just right. Okay, and I'm also making sure I'm smoothing this, don't forget that, or it won't really look like that sculpture, okay? So, I am about to be done. I'm gonna stop my video here. I'll post this for you, okay? And then we will kind of continue our project, and then I will keep adding. We'll do some drawing this week. Markers. I will do one of those prints with you. So if you don't get my little kit put together, you could use a piece of styrofoam from like a meat tray. So things that, again, you have laying around. Sometimes it might just be cool to watch a video knowing that you could do it later, but I'm gonna try to make things that you can do during the week. So I am done with my pre-pencil. And again, the unit today, or this lesson, was on sculpture and form, so 3D. So I'm kind of like the 3D queen. I love my 3D projects. We will do some two-dimensional things too though, okay? So from now until maybe tomorrow morning, I'm gonna let this dry. I'm gonna try and speed it up though. So yours might take like a little longer, and that's okay. But I'm glad I get to at least broadcast myself to see you. So definitely comment on the video and tell me what you think. Maybe you've got an idea or something that I could even reach out and help you with too. All right, thanks guys.